Hello, everybody. Steve Patterson here again, Wind and Raven, continuing these conversations on different ways of engaging the world consciously. And so today we're going to go into another realm of more of the esoteric side, not science side, to talk a little bit about the Northern tradition, and particularly some of the elements of the lore, but also how it is in the world today. Looking at that, being a native Icelander from the area that we read so much about when we talk about these stories. And so I'm joined by a friend of mine here. We have Nina Wolf Feather Bjorg. I hope I'm saying that right. Bjorg, right. And so going forward, all the words that I say, probably anything Nordic, even Odin, for all I know, is probably not going to be sounding the same way. So we're getting a real introduction into how that's said that way in English, though. But so, hey, thanks for agreeing to do this today.
Sure.
How's the weather there? I'm sure that's a question people have.
Actually, sunny now. It's sunny every day now. It's still a little cold and windy, but everything's coming alive. And here in Iceland, when it's like we don't really have the middle seasons, just winter and summer. We do, but they're like, the fall and the spring is really, really short. So when summer decides to come, it's like, and when winter decides to come, it's like,
And I'm so sure it could probably change to the winter on a dime, right? At any time.
Probably could, but I don't think it will. It might at some parts of the island, but usually it's fine. But the summer's short, so.
Summer's short.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's interesting to think of, the other day I did another one of these with a man on the Celtic stuff, tradition, you could say. And so whenever we talk about these things, there's two things we have to, one, do is, the one, we've got the stories as they come to us, in this instance, from the things like the Völuspá and the Havamal and the Icelandic sagas of the Icelanders, things of that nature that date from the period. They're as close as we can get. There's that. Then we've got all the romanticized stuff that has happened since, and everything Hollywood even gives us, and all the novels on whatever way they talk about any of these things, further distancing us from the truth, you could say, if there is such a thing. So really, the way I was looking at approaching this was to mention a couple of the concepts of these stories, and to see maybe how they impact your life growing up in Iceland. And I mean, I'm not going to say it like you're literally like getting off of a longboat every day and you're still in whatever.
No.
You have the normal experiences as everybody else everywhere else, but at the same time, you're there, you're there, and it's a very living thing around you. And so I guess maybe just talk about, I'll just ask you, sort of open-ended at the beginning, how, as a modern Icelander, descendant of these people, and you see all this in the world as it's portrayed, what do you feel about that connection with you, and how does that show up for you?
Well, like I've said to you before, like you have absolutely much more of a literature, like what you read and gathered in information wise. But for me, the gods are very human, and they have very, very strong human traits. So we not necessarily, in a sense, worship them, but we honor and respect them, if I can say it that way. So at least how I experience it is, they're very connected to the nature here, the seasons, and how we interact with the outside world, if you can say, how the weather is, and how the seasons act. Mm-hmm. So at least how I have experienced them growing up was very much so in how much I could interact with the nature part and the earth part. Had a huge effect on me. And we'll have our bloats according to certain seasons and things like that, because each god will belong to something special. So, yeah. I don't know if it answers anything, but
no, I get it. Thank you.
But they feel very alive. I mean, for me, they feel, very, if I can say, humanoid. Mm-hmm. If I connect and feel like I am having a dialogue, or in a way, it's very, very, very human, like talking to another human with a huge personality and stories and ways of looking at things and things like that. So in many aspects, if we would like dip our toes into, what we could consider spirituality and things like that, when people are talking about, we're talking to the elves and the fairies, we're talking to this and that and that. For me, talking to the gods is more like sitting down with a beer or tea and talking to a friend. And how they respond to you is often very much like that. At least how I have experienced it. Yeah.
And when we spoke recently about this, you said something, and you said it in so many examples that I thought really drove it home. And you're saying it here, that in what you were saying, you were saying that how that everything has a spirit, everything has or whatever you want to say, that if you want to dip, as you say, dip your toe in spirituality, it has that, the tree, the rock, the this, the that. That they all do, and I mean, all the way up to the example that a lot of people know, that in Iceland, the hill folk, or however you want to refer to, that they literally live in the land. You don't just move a pile of rocks; that could have a grave implication. Talk a little bit about that, and I don't want to just go to that, because a lot of people like to think, well, or not a lot, but that's a common Iceland thing. But it's
Yeah, and
real.
and it's always, I always think it's very funny and quite endearing in a way that Icelanders, it's like it's so rooted in us that even the people who absolutely will try to convince you very hard that they do not believe in the hidden people and the elves and things like that. The hidden people is the Huldufólk, which is the people who are the unseen people, but are very much a part of our life, and we know they're there. But even those Icelanders were like, no, I don't believe in that. But yeah, they'll be like, no, we can't move that rock in the garden. It might they might cause havoc if they're, So it's like, even those who are like, there's no way it's there, they still have that wait, because someone's grandmother talked sad story. Someone's, it's still very much alive. I mean, we still, teach our kids that there are actually whole families of hidden people and elves and things like that in these big rocks and in the hills of the mountains and in under the waterfalls and things like that. So there's a great deal of almost like a childlike connection to that part of how we interact with the land that kind of stays with us. At least that's how I kind of see it, that's how I feel it, and that's how I feel it in other people. So if they keep that part of them, that connection, that's like almost like it stays with that child within them. And they're, the hidden people and the elves, they like to tease you, they'll pull your hair and take your hat and hide your keys and hide one sock and so when we can't never find the one sock, we're like, oh, it's the elves. Yeah, we can't find our keys, we're like, oh, it's the elves. Yeah. Blame it all on them.
I had mentioned at the beginning that I wanted to talk about these specific parts of these stories, but I love this where we're at right now, because what we're doing is you're seeing it living. It's a living tradition. Granted, it's not like Hollywood says it looks. It's not like it has to be like that. But I think the other day when you mentioned this to me, I think that you may have even not used the word spirit, but they're people, like the tree people, the leaf people. Was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that, and then you look at things as far as and again, I'm outside of Iceland. This is how it's perceived. Because of our own political climate in the United States, they're at the one end of a particular financial endeavor, you might want to say, social. But that structure is so inherent in the mindset of oneness with everything. And so I'm not trying to get political or economic, but I'm just saying that you can see how, like you said, even the one that'll convince you it's not real still won't move the rock. It's still in there. And in that way, that's where that comes from, is that unity of belief that is so present. It seems with the Icelandic condition, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as me, and obviously I'm a person that talks about it all the time.
Mm.
So yeah, it has a different look to me, like that.
I think
But
that, we have so many stories and children's stories that, are linked to this, that's kind of probably how we, in a way, maintain it with our kids.
mhm.
Um, so, and it's kind of everywhere in a way, for me at least, it's just, we have these little things and we sell tourist things when it comes to elves as well and other things. And although the Viking thing is like huge now
Right, yeah,
because of
thanks
Hollywood and
HBO
everything. Yeah, because
or
they kind
whoever.
of went crazy
Right.
with it. But, you get my drift. It's just, it's there.
But what is also there when the person does come to visit from, say, the United States, and they've watched all 6 seasons or whatever of the show at, the Vikings that really
Yeah,
got things
yeah,
going.
yeah,
Um, and it has elements of things like some of these names are real, some of these battles are real, some of these events happened.
yeah,
But yet, so say they show up in Iceland. But when they get there, they're greeted with that stuff. I mean, you see, the statues, and you see the longboat, the one that's on display. Or I see the pictures, and then of
mhm.
course the humongous Asutra, how do you say, um, temple, right there, which
Yeah, also true.
also true, right,
Mm-hmm.
right there. I mean, huge, and that is effectively the modern expression of this same tradition in a very in an organized way. So it's really there when they get there to see it. Um, I mean, how much is that prevalent? Like the Asatru. I mean, is that tell us a little bit about that for people
Um,
that don't know.
well, I can only tell you a little. I'm still learning myself and reconnecting to this part of me. But also true is growing really fast now. It barely survived Christianity, but it did. And those who actually formed the kind of the Ausatru itself as a institution in a way, they had to fight for it. So we owe a lot to those elders who kind of banged their fist on the table and said, no, we are allowed to practice our old ways and we're going to do it. So also through, so I'm just thinking how to say this, but we do have our bloats and we do have our elders, which would be Goth, according to sections of the land. So each one has a section of a land in a way, like almost like you slice the land a little bit. And they serve that community. But you can go to all of them, but you usually go to the one that's closest to you.
Mhm.
So I have my own elder that I connect with and respect immensely, and learning slowly from each ceremony that I can go to and listen to her stories. She's a storyteller and teaches through stories, and so each story is quite phenomenal when she starts to talk. So what we've been seeing in also through and what they talk about though there is that it's growing in numbers and people are choosing to be a part of that rather than the church in a lot of ways, which was unexpected. They told me, and also true, that it just went.
Hmm.
So, yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, you
Or,
did. Yes, you
okay.
did. Thank you. Thank you. But I'm going to continue on that because I know that you have worked at some would call shamanism. I don't know if you directly call it that, but it's that flavor.
Yeah.
And as do I. But I also know that you've been to the United States for a time. You've mentioned it to me,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm sure you're aware of how that is present in the United States in that form.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about American shamanism, a lot of times we talk about Native Americans, and a lot of the language you just used, you hear there. We're learning from our elders about that indigenous practice, which, in your words, survived Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
That is no different than the Native American indigenous thing. And if you think of Iceland as originally being settled prior to the arrival of Christianity. Do you ever feel in that, and I'm not saying it would exclusively be because of shamanism, but that's the same energy levels there. And I'm not trying to equate Native Americans with Icelanders, but functionally it's the exact same process as far as the things that happened and the things that stayed. Now, granted, you weren't, I don't know, I don't want to rewrite anybody's history, but it didn't happen, say, in the same ways. But it was an arrival of one that replaced another. There's the other, which was there prior, somehow survives, and then later is talked about by elders and recultivated. Much what you see in the Native American movement today among themselves and other Americans that are attracted to it for whatever reason. Do you ever feel that space like that?
Are you talking when it comes to
Like identifying with, say, the Native American who out in South Dakota
Yeah.
is upset about the fact, and I'm not belittling it and saying it
No,
this
no,
way.
no, of
I'm
course
just
not.
trying to, and I'm saying that to anybody that might be watching as well. But their condition of being there in the plains in the 18 whatever, before, and they were probably eventually pushed there. But again, that being their last place, and now they're on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. That's a Native American reservation. And so here they are 150 years after Wounded Knee or however long it's been. And or not, well, there's a couple of them. But so now they are free of that not being able to do it, because for a while it'd be illegal for a Native American to do their practices. That's why they were sent to reform schools. And some of those elements probably took place to some degree in Iceland, I can imagine, way back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the point being that the Native American today, who is reinvigorating themselves, maybe it never left, similar to like you, but they're seeing it around them more prevalent in the world, is not unlike yourself as far as the process that got there. And so when we talk about indigenous people, basically it's an indigenous tradition that you're keeping in that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and very old, and the wounds in the ancestry are very old. When it came to when Christianity entered and things like that, and many people were killed, and it got nasty. I believe drowning was popular on things. We even have places that are named after things that were done like that. So it's kind of still there in a way. And we absolutely had to fight for the survival of the old ways, but a lot of people actually, what I find also interesting, there's people who are kind of also true, but also a little Christian. So it's like, it's also mixes there somehow. And that's all good. We're not,
whatever floats your boat.
Yeah. And what I really like about when you go to a blót, which is the ceremony in Austin, everybody's welcome. No one is sent away because they don't believe, or they're not in the union, or they're not in the, perhaps they're Christian too, or things like that. Things like that just don't matter there. It's just, if you want to come, you're welcome. It's more of a community thinking, and it's more about caring for your neighbor and caring for the people, and things like that. It's about us sticking together and supporting each other. That's kind of, when you go there, that's what you're feeling. You're feeling that part of it a lot. So
yeah, and I can tell by the way I had to ask the way that I asked the question about the connecting it to the Native American thing. You may not have ever even thought of it like that. I think of that as an American because I see that here. So it's interesting. I mean, you answered the question, don't get me wrong, but I can see how my own Americanness makes it hard to transfer over the mindset that I'm even coming at it with, because there's of the conditions of the United States. But well, while we're speaking broadly, and not to compare it to Christianity, and again, none of this has anything to do with anybody's personal beliefs. Everybody do it your own way. But in the speaking of the tradition in the sense of the lore goes, Balder is the son of Odin, right? Him and her, Frigga's mom, and all this. And so he's always consistently referred to as joy and goodness and bright and all these, really positive, uplifting ideas. And again, it's very difficult to really nail that stuff because how much of it's really written in the oldest thing and how much of it came later. But again, that generally speaking is Balder. Balder, due to some trickery, ends up dying and has to go to Helheim, which is the closest thing in the Nordic thing, you could say. And again, I'm not saying this to try to tell you what your modern day view of this is. I'm talking about the history
Yeah,
and probably the
absolutely.
way that people would blah blah blah.
Mhm.
So anyway, he gets killed, and he has to leave Asgard, vis-a-vis their heaven, you could say. I don't know why this thing. I have turned the volume down, and so he has to go to Helheim, where Hel, H-E-L. That's not how I say it as an American. I'm sure Nina's going to say it differently.
Mhm.
Is, and that's the story in and of itself. But so she's there, but she's not regarded in the way that you would refer to in other instances where you have a very like an angry god that's punishing you. This is
Yeah.
not like that at all. It's more of a place where you're at. And the only real description that I was able to find was one that says that it's where the souls that aren't cleared to go to Valhalla, basically. And what I mean by that is,
Yeah.
if you die on the battlefield, that's it. If you die any other way, you go there. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with that. You're just
Mhm.
there because that's the only way to go to Valhalla. And
Mhm.
so, with that in place, it becomes sort of like a quasi purgatory of sorts, but not even a punishment. Just you're just there. And so when Balder arrives, his soul, Hel or Hela, how do you want to say her name?
Yeah.
She said, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll try. I'll try. There's certain words
But
I'm
you
just
just
not going to be
say it
able.
the way you said it. It's
Okay,
fine.
good. I can. My biology has to change a little, I think.
It's fine.
But I'll learn that when I'm there, by the way.
Yeah.
So, but what happens is she says, no, you can't have him back, Odin, because he brings so much joy to the world. He can bring joy to these people now, these souls. So it's like, wow, why would you want to take away? So it's just a weird paradox there, and ultimately it doesn't work. And then he's there, and then you get sort of Christian-esque type of second coming when you get to Ragnarok, and that's when Balder comes back. When the other gods die, Balder comes back, and then but that's sort of it's the weird dynamic of the Nordic story where you already know the end, but you're still telling the story. And so it's this whole, and it's just the beauty of studying the Northern Pantheon. It's very, very, very intricate, especially when you get to runes and Yggdrasil and all these things.
Yeah.
But when we talked about this the other day, you had mentioned
Mhm.
something about a photo I'd taken about a rune spread that I was doing in my way.
Mhm.
And it was on, and you saw those words in that realm in Helheim. And
Mhm.
when you said it, I'd never really heard it phrased like that. And it really, the way that I kind of said it there is a flavor of it. But can I ask you to talk about, and I know you've mentioned that you work with specific, or you see them in the world, the gods, goddesses, and even that, the fact that in
Mhm.
Nordic, it's only gods. There's no
Mhm.
goddesses. They're all
Mhm.
gods. So I'm not trying to tell your whole story. Take it from there, that part of our conversation here today.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that part because I think each and every one of stronger connections to each and every dot, different dots. And for me, the strongest that I have is Hel and Thor, which is Helen Thor for you probably, but especially Hel. And when I saw the picture that you took, it caught my eye right away because what you wrote was in a respectful way for her. And also, when it comes to the god and goddesses and things like that, I mean, we'll use the word goddess because that's really the only English explanation we could bring someone who is an outsider who wouldn't really understand it. Other than if we just say God, they think it will all be male gods, right?
Mm.
But for us, the female gods are gods, not goddesses. They are equal to the man in every sense of the way, and sometimes even more important. Less was written about them. Some were even forgotten, but there are people here who have been kind of reawakening that part of us, that female
Mm.
god part of the old ways. which is very interesting. It's been a slow process, but it's beautiful, and there's people who are working on that know more of the female gods that I even knew that ever existed. But so here is, because we've been so spoon-fed with the movies and the stories and the things that we can get from the internet and things like that, that sees the badass of them, that sees the, the keeper of the hell realms, and sees the dark one, sees the, the dark in the darkness and things like that. In a way, yes, but in a way, no. So when I connected with her, because for me, all of the gods, like I've mentioned before, it's less reading from a book, and it's much more exploring and feeling each and every connection and making more of a personal connection to them, those that I feel called to talk to. And when she came into my life for the first time, she specifically had things to say to me, because I had been taught prior that from a friend who's not necessarily knows it all, but from a friend, that you have to talk to a certain female god to get access to all of the rest. So I thought that was the way at that point. So when I connect to Hel, which was in the darkest part of the year here, where there's almost no daylight and it's only dark, that's where she is the strongest. In the Native American, if we would compare, it would probably be, in the part of the wheel when we go inward, the west, the go in, the bear, the hibernation, the finding all the answers within. Sees that part of our wheel, she holds that connection and that wisdom. So when she did enter into my connecting to my consciousness, she was very straightforward. There was no drama, there was nothing. She just spoke, and it was really clear, and it felt loud, but it wasn't loud. It just felt like, because she was super clear. And she said, I asked first, oh, wow, okay, so I thought I had to talk to and go through that and wait. And she said, I answered to no God. I am a God. I come and go as I please. So from there, a connection just slowly started to form. And what I have come to learn through my own personal connection, that she is a guardian for these souls. So they're not burning up in damnation or things like that. If people misunderstand, because that's what the movies have told us, that it's almost like it's being linked into the Christianity, and they kind of try to find how can it be similar,
Yep.
But a friend of mine who is very knowledgeable, Icelandic friend of mine, he said to me that in the old written information, the world that Hel is in, the Helheim, was green. Had nature and trees and flowers, and it was alive. It was not dark. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And it was because it was a place for the souls to go where they would be cared for and protected and had time to process what they needed to process until they moved on. And that was kind of, for me to connect with her, that's always the feeling that I get from her. There's so much love, but there's this fierceness to her that is not to be messed with. And she will protect her part in these worlds very fiercely if she has to. And that's protect these souls that choose to stay there. So so when I saw the picture that you had on your, because usually when I see something from other people, it'll be very negative. It'll be very like, more connected to what we think hell is, like it's supposed to be a really bad thing, things like that. So it was the first time I saw from anyone else, other than an Icelander, that Hel was actually portrayed in a honoring way and a good way, not a negative or a heavy way. But she, you know, sometimes when I think about her, she reminds me of, you know, when we say that our conscience is like the tip of the iceberg, and then what's in the water is as unconscious part of us, which is a huge part. Yeah. For me, Hel is that unconscious huge part. Right. She's the one who kind of holds that part of, yeah. It's always the feeling that I get from her, because she is very connected to that part of us that we're not always aware of, but it's huge. It's really who we are. You know, you could call it a higher self or unconscious part, or you know, somehow she is like really, really connected into that. So I always feel that her responsibility is really big, but she's not really, mostly not portrayed that way, you know. Usually she's not really talked about at all, not a lot.
So this might sound like an odd question, and I really don't have a way to perfectly put what I'm thinking, but when you feel her as you do you feel, and when I say urgency, not literally, in other words, do you feel as if she shows you and demonstrates to you something that helps, or is it more of a gradual push along the way? You know, you understand where I'm getting at here?
Yeah.
And again, there might be both, but just generally speaking.
Yeah, I absolutely both. At least the way I have made a connection with her. And I think, you know, she probably shows up different for each and every person, because we're so influenced in our own belief systems and how we think and how we are. But when I made the connection, I was very surprised. I mean, I thought it would be something totally different. I just kind of had to digest it a little bit. It's like, okay, it's totally different from what I thought about in my mind, from the little information that I had. But it was not. It was absolutely not.
And so I had another question right there. I was thinking, darn. What was it? It was connected to that, but give me a second. I'll come right back. I got lost listening to you, because that's what happens. I come up with something and then it just goes. I like that presence in the world to be one that is strongly, it demands your attention because of what it is. Helheim, Hela, however, regardless of if you've not been really exposed to the outside spiritualities, you could say, you know they're there. And you know that when people hear those things, when you hear hell, there's really never a good treatment of that. Yet it's a not a soft or firm energy, but one that is present, that is not inherently like that it's made. It's more of the ability to be able to take that raw expression from that dark space, like in the subconscious, when we lose context of consciousness and it's just the facts, and they come back to us in a different way. But since they're stark, they give us messages, they give us dreams, they give us all kinds of things. And then in the waking world, we don't make sense out of it. And it's sort of like that. This space is like that, even on that level. We can't make sense out of it to some degree. And that's the mystery of that. And a lot of people inherently think that which they don't know is bad. There's nothing bad about that at all. It could be green grass. The land has nothing to do with it. It's how you are. Sort of, I don't know if this is how I'm sort of feeling into the wholeness of all this. But anyway, so one last thing you mentioned, and this is God Goddess real fast, but I've never seen anybody address this. In the Ragnarok story, we know what happens to Thor. We know what happens to Heimdall and Loki and everybody else. You know, everybody has their story. And I say everybody, but I'm talking about the ones that are God men. There's nobody, and not any Ragnarok story I've seen, and the ones I've read are the ones that come out of the Havamal and things like that. There's no Freya dying. There's no Scotty. There's no Frigg. you know, these things, unless they die at some other point. There's no mention of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and again, we don't know what happens after that, technically
Yeah.
speaking, because that's when Balder comes back. But it appears to me that if there's not an answer to that, then that means they survive,
Mm-hmm.
unless we just say otherwise. And so
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case, you once again have the process of maybe rebirth of a whole new world, so to speak, similar
Mm-hmm.
to the whole, you know, nine realms type of thing. I mean, you have the foundations there for renewal. It's just a fascinating dynamic that gets so misunderstood when we just look at the Marvel Comics version of Thor on TV, and you know, becomes, if he can throw his hammer far enough and it
Yeah,
comes back.
the blonde gorgeous guy.
Yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
mean, for me, he doesn't look like that. Not at all. Not even. I mean, he's awesome. I mean, he's a strong, badass, hyperactive kind of guy. But you
Right,
know, for me, he's always been like had this really big, rough hands and red beard and red hair, kind of rough
right.
looking. You know, not like this pretty. You
Yeah,
know, very
yeah,
funny, very
right.
rambunctious, and he kind of likes to do his own stuff. But he cares immensely deeply about the people, us, the humans,
Right.
and he keeps a close eye on us. Um, yeah, so
I believe
I
you.
always find it so funny to see these movies and these cartoon things when I'm like, no, 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 no.
Right. You know, because
Ah,
there are little factoids that come out of those oldest things. Like for instance, there's one that says that he'll always be there if a person asks for him, or something to that effect. And that doesn't literally mean he's going to plop down next to you, but
no.
he's with you. He's your protector. You know, he protects Midgard, which is Earth, right, of the nine realms. And so, but in the movie, you know, and I guess in the movie that means every time he says no, that they're being wrong or whatever. I don't know. But it's funny to watch him try to encapsulate just this sort of Hollywood tough guy, colorful comic character, and it's great entertainment. And it's
Yeah,
good that it's happening. Look
absolutely.
at it like that. Look at it like this. I mean, otherwise they don't talk about it ever again, and it's just reduced down to the people that are doing it, which is wonderful that they're doing it. It's theirs, but
Yeah,
it does draw in interest, keeps it alive.
yeah. I absolutely does. Absolutely. I mean, it's exploded here with the tourism and you know everybody's watched Vikings, right? And the movies, and so they're all like coming here going, we're gonna
Where's
do this.
Ragnar?
So we're kind of trying to keep up with that a little bit. It's like,
Right. Yeah, and what doesn't what I guess it does help. They use real names, you know, with
yeah,
these names. Ragnar Lothbrok, that's a real name, and Rollo, that's a real name, and you
yeah,
know, and even their stories are close. You know, they're Hollywooded out, just like any
of
novel would be.
course, yeah.
But I you know, it's fun. So and I'm going to be one of those tourists as soon as coronavirus is over, as you know well know.
Yeah.
I'm going to come there and butcher your language, I guess, in my efforts. So.
Oh, you can go for it, man. Only way to learn is to try
Exactly, exactly. Long way to run.
and experience the land. I think for most people, it's the the feeling of the land, the feeling of the air is so different from other places. At least what this is what people tell me. You know, I've always lived here, so I can't necessarily always compare. You know,
Hmm.
um, um, the energy of the land is so still moving, so still, you know, alive. You can feel it almost rumbling under your feet. But you know, sometimes I think maybe it's because Iceland is really geographically quite young.
Hmm.
So maybe that's why it hasn't kind of settled down into like these old parts of the earth, but it's
Hmm.
still kind of alive
Kind
with
of
all
alive.
the earthquakes and some volcanoes and some things
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
It could be fire or ice at any minute. You never know.
Absolutely, and even at the same time.
Even at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, this may sound like an odd question, but in the United States, we love to argue back and forth. Our political division is ridiculous to the point to where it's hard for some people to even be the slogan proud to be an American. In other words, there's lots of people out there that are fundamentally unhappy with America to the point they don't even like being American. It
Mhm.
does not sound to me, and granted, everybody I've only interacted with a few, but it sounds to me like I'm not going to try to stylize your political thing. I'm sure you have disagreements, but it sounds like you really enjoy being an Icelander. Is that pretty prevalent?
I think every single Icelander is very, very proud of being an Icelander. And we do actually cherish our nationality very deeply. I have not met so far an Icelander who does not appreciate being an Icelander. And I think a lot of things play in part there. I think this is something that somehow is just kind of embedded into who we are, because our ancestors had to really fight to survive. This land is not easy to survive on when everything is really raw before anything technological wise. I mean, it's not that long ago that we stepped out of our mud huts, if I can call it that. Moldarhus. So, you know, it's not that long ago. So I think it's still so in us that, you know, our great grandmothers and great grandfathers, they had to really tough it out in all these storms and crazy shifts in weather. And when, you know, we're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So, you know, like I always joke, you know, it's like, I think I said it to you, it's like, oh, the land of this island is wrong. It's not Iceland, it's the windy island.
Yeah, well, when you said it, you said, well, the wind only blows uh, horizontally, and then you said, or up.
Or if it rains or snow, and especially if it rains and it's really powerful, it'll go ding ding. So it's like it's raining up and the wind is hitting you. It's like, woo. I know if there's Icelanders listening, they're like, yeah.
Yep, yep,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
But I think, yeah, I think Icelanders have this sense of, I think I hear once in a while, I'll hear, you know, from other people, they're like, oh, Icelanders, they're so cold. They're so, almost like they're rough around the edges, or they're, you know, they're like these ice people and do. I'll hear it once in a while, less nowadays, but, you know, especially a few years back, maybe 10 years back and further, I would hear this once in a while. You know, for me, it was just like, huh? But I think, and this is just my own personal view of it, it's not wrong or right, you know, it's just, I think that we are more say what we think kind of people and do what we want kind of people. And we, you know, there was actually an article about this in, I forget it was if it was like a magazine or a newspaper or something, that they actually did these questionnaires and things like that, almost like a study kind of thing, in a study kind of form.
Mhm.
And then they would ask Icelanders, all kinds of random people, just whoever, just a lot of them, who do you believe in? And well, I think it was, I forget if it was like 70% or 80% or more or less, but it was significantly the bigger percentage. They said, I believe in myself.
Hmm.
And for those who were doing the study, because there was someone not from Iceland, I forget who, thought it was fascinating. It was like,
Yeah,
what?
that is a fascinating answer.
And you know, we'll
No
tend to
brainer,
say, well,
really.
you
Literally,
know,
no
I own
thinking.
myself, no one owns me. I think especially
Wow.
for the women, I think for us, we're more headstrong when it comes to that, and we're more like, you know,
Right.
don't compare me to, you know, I'll do whatever I want, you know, poof poof, you know.
Mhm.
But I mean it in a really, 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 really positive and a good, pleasantly way. I mean, I'm a woman, you know, so I've had to do it too. So
That is wonderful.
yeah, so I
That,
think the mentality of the Icelandic people, I think what tourists find interesting is this is kind of the mentality overall, and this is, you know, we may seem a little like cold and things like that, but we're just different in a lot of ways. and my point of view is often, I think it's because of where we come from and how our ancestors had to survive, but I think it's also because of the weather that we obsess about the weather. We have so many words about wind and all kinds of weathers and things like that, because it plays such a big part in our life. And we're very, 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 very hugely affected by the weather here. Very much. So, we'll obsess about the weather, and we can talk about the weather like for days to no end to it. We have all kinds of weather forecasts and apps, and, we're all thinking about, how long is the sun going to stay now? And, when's the next storm? And when, do I need to tie everything down now? Again, do I need to, do so that everything outside my house is okay and things like that. So I think it kind of shines through in a way, but people just don't necessarily understand what it is, which is quite normal.
When you were saying that the other day, you used the example, this phone, it's on no volume, but it won't do it. You use the example that if you're on your way, say you're going into Reykjavik for work, if the weather is going to cause you to be late, it's really not necessary to call because everybody's going to be late.
Yeah. A lot of times.
Everybody knows. I mean, the idea of saying the weather caused it is a given.
Yeah.
At
least where I've worked, they've been like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because they know.
Exactly.
Everything is slow right now because there's a storm going, so it's okay. We're not going to fire you. We're going to fire you for it.
So you're still being a tough people. You have no choice. If you show up, it could be a challenge.
No, not really. I mean, we are very technically, in everything, and we're. I hear a lot that we're quite known for catching up with new technical things fast. We'll modernize ourselves really, really, really fast. So we're really up to key with a lot of things that's going on. But I just feel like the if you can say the collective Icelandic soul, if you can say it that way, has this in them, and for me, I kind of like that part. I kind of like that we are this way because of this. It makes us who we are, and it makes it so obvious because of where the island is on the earth, where it's located. There's a reason we get all the leftover storms and all of that. So,
do you have time for one more thing I'm going to ask?
Yes.
Okay. And this is moving a little beyond just Iceland, but I want to hear the Iceland perspective. We talked a lot about how tradition and all that has been in this experience and how it has impacted the way people are, not only in the way that the spirituality is looked at, being somewhat aggressive at times, the harshness of it, the Viking thing, and then the very reality of growing up in Iceland and your ancestors doing what they did. How has the mindset, generally speaking, I know you don't know everybody, but how has Iceland reacted to this coronavirus thing? I mean, because in some areas of the world, you've seen people just lose their mind as far as the panic, like in the United States, and maybe there, I don't know, but emptying the shelves of toilet paper, freaking out, all these things. How has it been in your experience there? And I know we're still in it, but how's it been?
Well, I can only speak for myself, really. So at least I have not gone to the store yet, and there have been empty shelves or people running around going crazy. None of that. We are, of course, following all the protocols and the safety measures, and we're, you can't really throw a party right now or gather many people together and things like that. And a lot of companies and things like that have shut down to honor these safety protocols and to try to keep people as safe as possible. But at least compared to what I'm seeing on the internet and news and things like that, but little I do watch news, I really don't watch the news, is that I think we're pretty chilled. We're doing everything correctly. I mean, we're doing everything. I mean, they're really good here with any kind of protocols when it comes to serious stuff like this, because we are an island, so we've always had to make sure, like anything that's imported, like if new animals come or, you know, things like that, we're really strict because we're an island. So if something would happen serious, it's difficult because we're an island, you know. But I feel that we're, you know, actually dealing pretty well with it. And I think everybody is on the same wavelength and keeping everybody safe and following all the protocols and things like that. Me personally, I've been like, have to kind of remind myself, I'm like, oh no, I can't hug this person. Or oh no, I can't. I'll forget that I have to keep the distance. But still, you know, I have friends here in Iceland that we're just still hugging and staying together, but we're not, it's all good, you know, we're not gonna go crazy. We're not gonna, you know, cause problems and trouble.
You're gonna somehow survive this.
Yeah, I think we're doing really well. But then again, we're very small. We're only just a little over 300,000.
Right.
Although I did read about years ago that they estimate about 100,000 Icelanders live somewhere else in the world. So there's more of us. There's just less here. And
well, how about people coming there? Do you get a lot of people moving there? I mean, do you detect that a lot?
Some. I mean, more now. When I was a kid, there was like, I remember when I saw a colored person for the first time, I just, you know, stared, not because I was afraid or being rude. I was just a kid, you know, I just thought it was so fascinating. Yeah. I was like, oh, this person has beautiful dark skin. You know, I've never seen that before, you know.
I've never seen that before. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, but that has changed fast over the years. And now we have people here from all over the world, but significantly less. I mean, when you would compare it to like America, which is kind of ridiculous to compare it to because America is like millions and we're like, you know. So we're like, compared to you guys.
Yeah, I saw the other day somebody mentioned a story and they said Iceland, they said it was the size of the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, something
and
like
that instantly gave it size to me. And I was like, wow.
I know, right? It's
but so a part of me made it think, oh, I didn't realize it was that big because you think island. But anyway, it is what it is.
Well, we have this cute saying that I think one of our wife of a president said that Iceland is the littlest country in the world.
The littlest country in the world?
The biggest, littlest.
The biggest,
the biggest, littlest. Littlest,
with the most difficult language and the happiest people, right?
Yeah, well, what she was meaning was that, you know, we're very small. I mean, the land is tiny, really.
Right.
But for us, it's huge.
Exactly.
We're not afraid to go, ha ha.
Exactly.
I think we really, Icelanders overall really care a lot about our land. And some will fight to preserve the land very fiercely, which is awesome, I think, you know.
But it sounds like they're off to a head start, comparatively speaking, because your average Icelander sounds like inherently, you know, cares about the land. So it's not like you're in some other areas where the people just flat out see it as a resource and they just want to chop it up or mine it or whatever. I'm not saying you don't do those things, but
and we do have factories and things like that,
right,
of course,
exactly.
as well.
But you have a closer gap between the mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That's good. I like that. Well, hey, thanks a lot for this, and I look forward to seeing you at some point, whenever the Corona era transitions into it's okay to fly.
Right.
Yeah. And then I can come see some vertical rain and get splashed. I can get rain on my chin.
Yeah, if you come during the winter, maybe you'll get some storms.
Well, who knows? It might be the winter by the time all this goes, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't want to bring. I know you don't let any. You still have the Icelandic horse, and there's some others that have been exclusive there. You don't allow them, so you don't want a wild coronavirus to come with me. So we got to wait till the coast is clear.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to impact your native Icelander coronavirus. It's actually changing its attitude now. It's feeling up. All right. I thought I'm getting silly now. Thanks a lot. And let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. This is
All right.
fun.
I'm going to end the live.
All right.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you can take something from it. I really enjoy making these videos. I like expanding our awareness around so many different things, whatever we can get our hands on, whether it's science or spirit, you know what I'm talking about. I would like to invite you to my Patreon community, where I'm going to begin hosting groups of people. We can come in and we can interact. We can talk amongst each other about some of these things from time to time, and some other exciting things I have planned as far as expanding even what I'm doing now to include some written stuff to go along with it, and images and things to really illustrate some of these things that we talk about as we explore consciousness foundationally as it emerges in the universe. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for liking and sharing of these videos. That's how it grows. I am a counselor. That's my day job, if there is a day to it, especially in this time with the world being so different now. But we all get by how we can, and I'm going to keep exploring how I can, and I'm glad that you can come along for the ride. Please contact me on email. My website is windandraven.com. You know where I'm at on Facebook and YouTube. You can find all that there. Thanks again, and I can't wait to see you again. Bye.